Yeah, thank you, Aviv. This is the seventh off the record that we've done, and they've all been great, and you guys have been great hosts, WSC, and we appreciate everyone getting here because we know it's been a busy week with the snow, and especially Christian, who took a red eye last night. So we really appreciate it. Everyone, I think, knows the dominance of YouTube. Christian Oestlien is the VP of subscriptions. He reports to the CEO, Neil Mohan, and I think it's pretty safe to say that you are becoming, if not already, one of the most important people in sports. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And this, I mean, doing this event, obviously.
I don't think that's correct, but I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
no, it definitely is.
Yeah.
So let me, I want to first start with your background because it's a little unique. Just, just let us know how you, how you grew up and then, how you ended up at YouTube. Just, if you give us a little synopsis of your background.
Yeah, I'll try and be quick. I was lucky enough to grow up as an expatriate. My dad actually worked for a Canadian American company called Seagram's, and we traveled the world working for them. I was born in Italy, in Rome, and then moved to New York as a preschooler, then to San Francisco, and then I spent elementary and middle school in Brazil, in São Paulo, Brazil. And after that, high school in London. And then while I was in university in California, my family moved to Hong Kong. And so I spent a lot of my summers working in Hong Kong and doing my internships out there. Got to be there for the handover and a lot of really exciting events. After school, I did a few startups. It was sort of the early days of the internet, and had a little bit of success there, enough that I could take a few years off and go to grad school at Berkeley. And while I was in grad school at Berkeley, met all these really fascinating people that were working at this small company in Mountain View called Google. And they invited me to interview, and I went through that process. And at the time, it was sort of one of these, you had to get through 16 interviews, and any one of those people could veto you. And so if you got to the end of the process, you're like, well, I have to take this job now. It's too good not to. Anyways, that was 2006, and I worked for 7 years in the ad side of the business at Google. Had an opportunity to go help Twitter expand internationally. And so I spent a couple years at Twitter building them out in Japan and India and other markets. And then when Susan, who was, she passed away recently, but she was the CEO of YouTube for a really long time. When she went to YouTube, she asked me to come over and help her figure out how to work better with sports leagues and media companies. This is around 2014, 2015. And that's actually how I ended up at YouTube, and kind of that was where it all started.
Yeah, so the reason I wanted to ask about your background, because I knew about it, and I think you're uniquely positioned because YouTube, I think when you look at it globally of what you guys are trying to do and the reach you have in sports is one of the things that stands out. And so this is one of my favorite questions. Just if you were to tell people what you're doing with YouTube and sports, YouTube TV as well, we have to mention, of course, what should they know?
I think the biggest thing that I want people to take away is that we really see our mission at YouTube to become a platform for all video. And one of the things we saw really early on was that sports really occupies a giant portion of what people love and consume and are passionate about. And if we're really going to be the home of fandom, one of the things we really know we have to invest in and really build out is a great place for sports fans. So going all the way back to 2015 or so, we embarked on this mission to become the home of clips and highlights, something that WSC and others are very familiar with. But we really set out to be on a mission where we should be the one place where whether you're watching the game or you missed a game, you know you can come to YouTube and catch up on anything you might have missed. And that was a really big build out that happened globally. And to your point, we've really always had a global focus, partnering with sports leagues all around the world, prioritizing sports on a global basis. And so when you think about YouTube, I really want you to think about it as we're trying to cultivate YouTube as a home for fandom, as a home for sports. For an entire generation, YouTube is the new sports center. Whether that's watching shorts or catching up on highlights, they come to YouTube on a daily basis to consume sports content. 40 billion hours last year of sports were watched on YouTube. And all the leagues have leaned in and they've become tremendous partners. And so everything you're seeing us do, whether it's YouTube TV or Sunday Ticket, is really an evolution of our desire to be really great partners to the sports leagues, but also to our broadcast partners and the media companies that sort of sit in between us and those sports leagues. And then to just make sure that for the average fan, we're building the best possible experience for them that really captures the joy that comes from global sports.
And so when you did that and you went and you tried to be the leader in clips and highlights, is that, those were on YouTube at certain points, not legally, I, believe. And then was that to kind of legitimize it, or how did the transition go?
No, actually, the leagues have been partnering with us from the very beginning. I think the NBA launched their channel.
Like I said, it's since the beginning.
Yeah, it's in 2005. In 2005, sorry. Now, and they were some of our first partners on Content ID and all the tooling that we've built to help them sort of protect their content and their IP on the platform. So that's always kind of been hand in hand, is as this stuff is getting uploaded to YouTube, whether it's coming from the leagues or from fans, giving the leagues agency over what happens with that content is a really important principle to us. And the leagues have actually found that they benefit tremendously from this fandom and from the fan uploads and from the fan participation in the sports. And we give them all the tooling to monitor that and make sure that it's all happening in the right ways. So I think it's really been a wonderful partnership where we've been able to scale with the leagues, get them now to really lean into the channels, invest in discrete events, invest in more clips and highlights, shows behind the scenes, and as of late, actually leaning in really deeply to creator partnerships. So many of our league partnerships now, we actually have creators on the field, behind the scenes, in the locker room, capturing content, sharing it with their fan base. We have this crazy stat where something like half of Gen Z would rather hear about an event after the event from their favorite creator than watch it live.
Mm.
To me, that doesn't mean that they don't want to watch things live. It's that they have this tremendous connection to the sports that they're passionate about through the creators that are the storytellers, the modern era storytellers on our platform.
Now, there's so much that we're going to get into, from Sunday Ticket to your interest in the NFL, YouTube TV, and their relationships. But what I find very interesting is the creator aspect of it,
Yeah.
and the partnership. Now, if I'm a sports league and I hear, well, they rather watch their creator than, not, you didn't say this exactly, but than necessarily watching the game, that would scare me a little bit.
Yeah.
Why am I?
No, I don't think they should be scared. I think
Okay.
they should be excited. And I'll
Okay.
give you a wonderful example. One of the markets we're really invested heavily in sports is Brazil. And we've spent the last several years building out our presence in Brazil through soccer. We have two major tournaments in Brazil that we're very invested in: the Paulistão, which is the major soccer tournament for the state of São Paulo, and the Brasileirão, which is the overall umbrella tournament for Brazil. And what we learned is actually originally when we started down that path in the first season or two, we actually had the games playing on the official channel of the leagues. And it was doing great and we were really happy with it and it was continuing to evolve. But what really turbocharged the fandom was when we actually partnered with a creator in Brazil named Casemiro, who has a channel called Casé TV. And he basically broadcast the games on his channel. He provided the commentary. And he's become such an integral part of soccer in Brazil that he's sort of the voice of soccer in Brazil now. And that was all built off of his YouTube presence. And he's gone on, which we're always very happy to see. He's gone on and he's available on a bunch of different platforms, but YouTube is still his home. And the heart of what he does is still, commenting on broadcasting live sports on YouTube. So for our leagues and our league partners, the creators are actually this tremendous opportunity to amplify their reach and to find new audiences. In every sport that we've worked with on YouTube, we've actually aged down tremendously, which of course is really exciting for the leagues as they think about the next 10 years and where they're going to find fandom beyond linear television.
Now, when you look at what you've done, over more than a decade now, is there a landmark move that you made that sort of said YouTube has arrived in sports? Because I have one that sticks out for me, but I'm a little bit older than the people who like the creators. But what's it for you?
Gosh, there's so many that have built up over the years. We had a little bit of a crawl, walk, run strategy early on. One of the first things that we really tested back in 2019 was our partnership with Major League Baseball, Game of the Week.
Mm.
And that was really just trying to figure out, how good would we be at bringing audiences over that would traditionally watch on RSNs? If we took RSN programming and broadcast it internationally, how much of a global audience could we bring to baseball? What would it mean to weave creators in? So I think there were a couple moments there where it was like, oh, we can actually tell a story from the YouTube perspective around live sports that's really compelling and interesting to the user. But there have been so many seminal moments in live sports. I think Sunday Ticket was a wake-up call for everybody that, were really serious about sports on YouTube. But I'll even think about some of the creators, like when Ronaldo launched his channel, and I think he got to like 50 million subs in 7 days or less. So everything has just been this progressive build of sports and fandom on the platform, new heights launching in the US. The World Cup now, by the way, that's coming up. We're going to be broadcasting the entirety of the World Cup on YouTube in Brazil, which, has a lot of us working overtime to make sure our infrastructure can support that. So, for me, it's never been like one singular moment. Maybe it was Sunday Ticket, and we'll talk about that. But I think it's just been this steady build. Every year, every quarter, we're investing more and more and showcasing what YouTube can really do for sports leagues and for athletes.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to start with your background, because Brazil's been a big part of some things that you've tried, and that you've had a lot of success there. Sunday Ticket was what I was thinking of. Just what was the reasoning behind doing the Sunday Ticket deal?
Well, I should say, by the way, another big sports piece trivia is my dad played for Norway in soccer. And so that's just been in our blood. I think one of the reasons we actually ended up living in Brazil is because he wanted to be able to play soccer every day after work with these amazing players that we got to meet growing up.
Wait, hold on. You can't just tell me that. And then we need to know, how good was he? Did he play in the World Cup?
He was, well, no, Norway back then was not World Cup level, but he played in what would have been the equivalent of like Champions League back then, and played in some of your German teams. And they won the cup.
How good a player were you?
This is a great question, because my dad did everything he could to make me a great player. There's an incredible Brazilian soccer player named Rivellino. I don't know if you guys know a lot about Brazilian soccer, but there's a legendary player for Corinthians named Rivellino who had a soccer academy. And my dad actually became pretty good friends with Rivellino and got me into the soccer academy. And you could tell I was the one guy who had gotten into the soccer academy. Because these kids were just next level talent. No, so I'm not that great of a soccer player, but I love the sport deeply. And watch out for Norway this World Cup. They're the surprise team. I think.
Fair enough. All right, back to American football. The Sunday Ticket deal.
So why?
Yeah, the why. What was the reason behind that?
Look, we always knew we wanted to partner more deeply with the NFL. Everyone understands the power and the presence that the NFL has and its ability to draw audience, even on a platform the size and scale of YouTube. I think there's something really interesting about how captivating NFL fandom is, and how important it is, I think, for sports fans in the US. If you look at linear broadcast, and we had several years of experience, obviously, with YouTube TV looking at linear broadcast, you just see how dominant the NFL is in terms of driving audience and having the top broadcasts. So we've always had a really big interest in seeing what we could do with the NFL, how we could help them grow the sport, how we could help them bring in a whole new generation to the sport. So in general, we thought Sunday Ticket was a really interesting property because it plays to one of our strengths from a business standpoint, which is YouTube obviously is very well known for being this free service. We've built a very large ad business over the years. Like I said, 40 billion hours a year of sports content being consumed on YouTube. But on top of that free platform, both in the music and premium side and the YouTube TV side, we've built a really substantial subscription business today. And what we thought was really compelling and interesting about Sunday Ticket was that it played to both of those strengths for us. So not only was it an opportunity for us to showcase how we could transform Sunday Ticket, which is, I think this legendary product that started so many years ago with DirecTV, when DirecTV was sort of like the hub of sports. And so we really thought a lot about how we could evolve the product. And then we knew from a business standpoint, it was actually something that we thought we had a lot of strengths that could play into, both the capacity of our sales team to go out and sell NFL advertising, but also our ability to build a really substantial and scaled subscription business. And, this was our third season just now. And one of the stats we reported, it's not really a stat, it's a claim, but it was the most subs that Sunday Ticket has ever had in the history of Sunday Ticket, which now I think is approaching 35, 40 years. Okay. So it's been really successful on the platform. The team's done a fantastic job building a really compelling product experience. And like I said, really great for us to be able to showcase what we think YouTube can do with live sports when given the chance.
And how many subs is that?
A lot.
Okay, good. I tried. And so what's the biggest thing you've learned from doing it? Is there something that surprised you? Because, for those who don't know, when you look at we talk about YouTube a lot, but Christian's also, in charge or overseeing YouTube TV in what they do in subscriptions. And YouTube TV is at 10 million homes around. Comcast and Spectrum are about 12 million, but YouTube's arrow's going up. Spectrum just kind of started to go up a little bit now, but it looks like YouTube will probably surpass it in the next few years. So you mentioned how they meld together.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, which is one of the things we knew we could capitalize on is we had a huge NFL fan base in YouTube TV. So we thought it would be really great and really additive to the YouTube TV experience if you weren't just getting the in-market games or the national games that come with YouTube TV, but if we could present a complete product offering. One of the things that we've really tried to do in live sports on YouTube TV is buck this trend of all of the content being spread out and hard to find and on disparate platforms. And so we work with our partners to make sure they're well compensated, that they're happy with the growth that we're delivering on our platform. But one of the things we really are insisting on behalf of the customer is to make sure that we're getting as much of the sports programming that's out there as possible, especially for the price point. YouTube TV is not a cheap product for the average household. It might be cheap relative to traditional cable, but it's a real investment, and we want to make sure we're delivering on that value proposition of a really complete sports product. Nothing better than being able to say every game every Sunday.
Yeah.
Especially for the NFL fan and the NFL community. And we knew we were in the middle of building things like multi-view. So we knew that it wouldn't just be that we would deliver every game every Sunday, but we'd find really new and compelling ways to let people watch and experience that.
All right, that's a good transition for me, because if you really wanted every game every Sunday, you'd also have Sunday Night Football under YouTube. So
well, we do through our partnership with
true.
WSC.
Okay, fair enough. But I'm saying directly. So let me ask you this: you did the Brazil game at the beginning, second game of the season last year. First off, why did you do it, and how did it go?
It was an opportunity that was presented to us. We're in constant dialogue with the NFL, and we were really excited at the chance to finally do an NFL game that was produced and felt like it was something native to YouTube. And one of the things that was really unique about that game is that was the first game on streaming that was put in front of the paywall. So just free to everybody, which I think is something that's also really unique about what YouTube can do and the value we can deliver to the consumer. Reduce the friction, make it easy to find, and nothing better than just being able to give it away for free. So the NFL was, kind enough to look at us amongst many other partners and give us a shot at doing it. It's a really legendary story internally. The team was able to turn around that game in 100 days. So we found out 100 days before the game that we were going to be the streamer of that game. And so it was a really crazy sprint internally to do everything from secure the on-air talent that would be doing the broadcasting, create the artwork that would drive it, bring in creators, convince Carol G to be a part of the halftime show. So really proud of the work that the team did there. It was a 100-day sprint. I think we learned a ton about what it means to drive audience on YouTube, and I think we'll only continue to build and do better off of what we did in those quick 100 days.
Okay, I think it was 16 million globally, and then you guys beat, and then
19.7.
No, 19.7. Well, first it was 16, but then you guys did your thing.
Yeah.
No, just kidding. But yeah, it was 19.7 at the end of the day. And from what I understand and what it seems like, you guys felt you're happy with, maybe not, I think the number you maybe would want a little bit better for that first one, but you want more, perhaps.
100%. Actually, that metric that's reported is the average minute audience.
Yep.
So that's sort of a measure of every moment in time, how many people were viewing it. We actually had far more than 19 million people clicking in and experiencing it and trying it out. So we're very confident we can drive much bigger numbers. It's one of those things where repetition is really what builds the strength there. But I think we didn't have anything to benchmark against except the Peacock game the year prior, right? We didn't know how second game of the season would do. It was in Brazil. Time change is a factor. It was a Friday night. So we set ourselves some really ambitious goals. But more than anything, what we really wanted to make sure was that we could deliver a really high quality game. And we got very good feedback, I think, that the quality of the stream was very good, that it was broadcast quality or better in some circumstances. And that it really, one of the things I was really proud of is somebody described it to me as like a whole household event. And you'll hear me say that a lot because I think it's really unique to what YouTube can deliver. somebody was telling me a story where the dad in the house was really surprised that there was some guy shooting people out of a cannon. And then the kid in the house was really surprised that there was like football adjacent to a guy shooting somebody out of a
Okay.
cannon, you know, because Mr. Beast
Yep.
always does that. So why wouldn't he shoot somebody out of a cannon? But that's what we're able to deliver on YouTube. We're able to deliver a platform and an entertainment value that I think appeals to everyone in the house. If you were a core NFL fan, we tried to make sure that the game really performed, that we had quality, consistent commentary that people would be happy with. We wanted to bring in a whole younger generation by surrounding all of that with creators and having them on the field, whether that was, iShowSpeed doing a watch with, or Michelle Carre kind of doing an intro to the whole thing. And so for different parts of the household, you were reacting differently to various aspects of it, but it accomplished what we wanted, which is we brought in the whole household. Halftime Carol G show was huge, and a lot of people got really excited about that. She's gone on to do even bigger and better. She was already huge at the time, of course. But so we feel like what YouTube can do that's really unique in the combination of just really honoring the core value proposition of live sports in the NFL, which is an incredible product on its own, but augmenting that or adding to that by bringing in creators and music talent and podcasters and all these people that are native to the YouTube platform, I think is going to be the direction in which live sports goes in general.
And when you look at live sports, only in front of the not always free, not YouTube TV. Is that safe to assume?
Well, whenever we do these things, it's always available on
Sure,
YouTube
of
TV.
course.
But yeah, I think we'll come up with a nice mix, I think, of opportunities to present games that are free. Some things we might put behind a subscription. Others might be, a mix of the two. So I think there's a lot of flexibility there from a business model standpoint. A lot of that is actually working with our partners to see what their priorities are. Monetization is really important, but I think one of the critical things that leagues are concerned about and hopefully see an opportunity in YouTube in is we can really deliver that reach. Yeah.
Now, the NFL and ESPN did a deal where ESPN gave up 10% of ESPN to the NFL. In that deal, they took back 4 games, which are up for auction for this year. When you look at them, and I know you're interested, and there's other people are interested as well. But why, what makes those something that you would want to pursue?
Well, we talk to the NFL all the time about how we can build a deeper partnership with them. They're obviously a world-class media organization. We want YouTube to be a core part of their media distribution fan strategy. Whether it's the single game in Brazil, the games that you're talking about here, international games, or whatever sort of portfolio of future rights might come available. I think we're just really excited to build on the momentum we already have. We've got YouTube TV, which is doing really well, continues to grow, and hopefully at some point might be able to be the largest, paid television service in the United States. We've got Sunday Ticket achieving record numbers. And now we're really leaning into production and our creative community and the fans that are on YouTube to, I think, really build that next generation of sports viewing, of sports consumption that ages down the product, but still delivers that really high quality game experience that everyone's come to expect. So, whether it's 4 games that are available today or a portfolio of games that are available in the future, we want to continue to be a part of that conversation and have an opportunity to put our best foot forward.
Now, how do you balance that with your partners, which we'll get into further? But ESPN, NBC, Fox, CBS, they're all on. They're on YouTube, but they're also on YouTube TV. How do you balance when you look at that? Because obviously this is core to their business and kind of core to your bit. Like to me, when the ESPN kerfuffle with you guys was going on, you guys need each other for that to have it.
And by the way, the ESPN team are fantastic partners. Jimmy is the nicest man in sports media. And we really value our partnership with them. I have a lot of former coworkers that are there now. So with all of our broadcast partners, we care deeply about our relationship with them. And we've invested the past decade in building a business around sports and broadcast that benefits them tremendously. And we will continue to invest heavily in that and continue to grow that. It doesn't mean that there won't be opportunities for us to do things that might be uniquely YouTube. But fundamental, and this is a really important point, fundamental to what we are doing in live sports, media, and entertainment is we want to be the platform of choice, the best distribution partner we could possibly be for everybody that's involved in the media ecosystem. So whether that's ESPN or Paramount or our partners at Fox or NBC, we spend a huge amount of time with them, making sure that we're building a product that is very successful for them, both from an audience and from a business perspective. And I think they would recognize that if you ask them. And then we also work with them where we can, when we're doing things that are discrete or potentially YouTube. One of the nice things about the single game that we did in Brazil is actually that NBC was our broadcast partner. And they brought a level of professionalism and talent. I had a chance to sit in the control room with Pierre and these guys that are just masters of their craft. And I think that's lost on a lot of people when they just say, well, a streamer is going to show up and do a game. Like the people that produced the Olympics over the last several weeks, the Super Bowl, the game that we did in Brazil, it's world-class talent that's really hard to find. And so we really value our partnership with broadcasters and the media companies from that perspective too.
Now, there's a little technical. I'm getting a little ahead of ourselves here, but let's just say you were to get 4 games. Would you have to, at some point, and we've already seen this with Netflix, and you guys even had a little trouble, but also that was a little bit because of the schedules of a lot of broadcasters. And, there was the first weekend of the season, so a lot of people were working. But would you create your own production unit and your own broadcasters? Because, the networks, like you said, you do have partnerships with them, but they know that YouTube, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Apple, they are threats to them in a lot of respects.
Today, production is not our strength. Everything that we do, like Coachella, is something that we've been heavily invested in over the past several years. We work very closely with GoldenEye to produce that. We're really just a distribution partner on that front. They're the masters of bringing that to life. So will there be opportunities, I think, for us in the future to find which ways in which we lean in more or less? Absolutely. But today, what we're really excited about is that we can be a distribution partner for the leagues and for everybody in media and broadcast, and that we can lean into the strength of our creator community to, I think, really develop a whole new format.
And I think, this has been reported a little bit, but the NBA, they did their new deals last year. They re-upped with they re-upped with ESPN. They did the NBC Peacock deal, and then Amazon Prime, again, all those 11-year deals. You guys were pretty active in those negotiations. What did you see with the NBA that kind of appealed to you?
Well, the NBA is one of our longest, if not our longest, partner on sports on YouTube. And so we have so much history with them. We have so much respect for what they've built. And in particular, how global of a product they've built, which I think really plays to the strengths of YouTube. We really view ourselves as a global service. We've talked a lot about that today. The NBA is truly one of those global leagues that is in many ways unmatched in its global footprint and its global presence. So we want to continue to invest really heavily in that partnership with the NBA. Obviously, we look at everything that comes across the table, and they don't come across the table that often. So when we do get a chance to talk to the leagues about how they're thinking about the future of their games, their streaming rights, we always want to be at the table having that conversation with them. It doesn't necessarily mean we're always the ones who end up with the end product.
And I think when you look at all of these, I mean, and I think it kind of, again, I don't want to speak for you here, but I think when the ESPN and you guys were fighting about what the distribution numbers and everything should be, people are like, well, it doesn't matter. It's Google, it's Alpha. They have so much money, but you have a budget, and you guys
Oh
can't.
yeah, absolutely. One of the things I love about working on a product like YouTube TV is we have we have a fiduciary obligation to Alphabet, to Google, to everybody that we work for, to make sure that we're managing this business in an appropriate way. And by the way, one of the advantages of doing that is it forces us to really make sure we have a lot of cost discipline, a lot of pricing discipline. We want to make sure that not just from the perspective of managing the business in a healthy way, we want to make sure that it's healthy from the consumer standpoint too. So one of the things that we do argue about with our partners, disagree more than argue, is, what are the fees? What are the rate of increases in fees? And those things are really important to us. One, because we're trying to manage the business in a very healthy way, and there's that expectation from YouTube and Alphabet that we would do that, but also from the consumer standpoint. So one of the things we really, really worked hard on this past renewal cycle, it wasn't necessarily just about arguing about cost. It was about working with our partners to try and craft packages that would be more appealing to consumers. And by crafting those packages, you necessarily create kind of a deflationary situation where you're not locked into one uniform package, and you can now discreetly go and sign up for a YouTube TV sports plan, which is almost $20 cheaper. And so those things accrue, those things add up, and they really matter to the consumer. And so that's a lot of what we end up fighting for. It's not necessarily a dollars and cents thing. We want to make sure our partners are well compensated because they do a lot of really good work licensing and producing the content that ultimately shows up on YouTube TV. But it has to be something that, from the end consumer standpoint, ultimately makes sense and is a rational business overall.
So I want to, before we get to YouTube TV, I want to ask you two things about global and local. Just globally, we had Jay Marine here, we had Jamie Vitaro, Mark Shapiro for these, and we talk about global sports, and the thing that I kind of come back to is there's different time zones. If
Right.
an NBA finals, here. If you're in England, the game starts at 8:30, it's 1:30 there.
Yeah.
So the idea sounds great, but doesn't necessarily work. And I think Amazon kind of looks at it more of market by market. Not that they have some global rights. They look market by market and how do you look at the global game?
It depends by sport.
Yeah.
And it depends by market. So certainly when you were looking at something like the NBA, you were trying to figure out um, what times would impact Europe, given the strength of the fandom in the European markets. For other things like soccer, you really do kind of look at the global footprint. Obviously, it factored into how we thought about the Brazil game. Friday night in Brazil, very early morning in Europe. It's the evening time in many parts of the U.S. It's East Coast time. So time zone is always a factor, but one of the things that I think is really cool about YouTube is people are so used to time shifted consumption with us. Like I said, we started as the home of clips and highlights. So I'm a Premier League fan. I don't always get up at 5 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday to watch a game, but I know that if I want to, I can either go straight to YouTube TV and watch the DVR'd full version of the game, or I can go to YouTube and watch the highlights of the game and kind of get through it in 15, 20 minutes. And so what I think we can start to do as a sports industry, as leagues start to think much more globally, is think about how we craft those really compelling time shifted experiences. And ideally, of course, design games to be at a maximal audience time from the perspective of where the fans reside. But certainly you can create so much of a shoulder experience around it. Like take the Olympics in Milan. Not too many of us tuned in for an event by event viewing experience, but I thought NBC did a fantastic job of packaging everything up at the end of the day and kind of walking you through the highlights of everything that happened in Milan. So I think a lot of that will play when you start to develop sports more globally. I think there's also an opportunity to think about games themselves being played locally, right? That's a big part of the NFL's push. My 49ers are going to have a very rough international travel schedule this year, but hopefully they'll do great. So I think there's an opportunity both to take the sport to local markets and really build fandom locally, because when you're on the ground for something like the NFL in Brazil and you really see how the locals light up at the opportunity to go watch an NFL game live, I think it's just a fantastic experience. And you can do that across all sports. Then you can think about programming on a platform like YouTube to not just be isolated to this 2-3 hour linear window, right? We can surround the entirety of that linear experience, both by capturing it and presenting it again, but also having all the color commentary, all the podcasts, and make it one of those experiences that is not just about the game, it's about the entire culture of the sport.
Now, it's something we talk about a lot on the podcast with Mita Perel, or then when I have Orand on, is local. And, we focus on baseball a lot, but the NBA is trying to figure that out. NHL is trying to figure it out. How can YouTube help solve that problem?
Well, one of the things that we know we do well is we've built a product today with YouTube TV that has gotten us to a place where we're very smart about DMAs and the lines that represent how zip codes map to everything. A lot of people are good at that today, but that's just to say we have a lot of competency today in distributing local sports. We still have RSNs on YouTube, on YouTube TV, sorry. And so we understand how to distribute local programming. I think the real opportunity for the leagues, and I think they're leading in this direction, is to think a little bit more broadly about the packaging of these local rights, maybe even in conjunction with what they already do out of market, to create a really complete fan experience. Because I think
what do you mean by that? When you're saying like you could watch a Yankee game you get the Yankees locally, and then you get all the games basically.
Yeah, think about the NFL Sunday ticket
Yeah.
experience as pretty analogous, right? I think if you're a fan, you don't want to have to go through this mental exercise of what's a local game, what's an out of market game, am I in the right zip code, am I not?
Yep.
Uh, Sports has evolved, and TV services did start as local MVPDs, local franchises, all those kind of things, but most of the streamers are national products today, and many of the streamers that we distribute are international products today. And so I think the lines are becoming more and more blurred. And from a fan perspective, what I would love to see from the leagues, and hopefully we can be a part of helping to solve that, is to just eliminate those artificial boundaries. Because I think you're going to grow the pie really substantially when you just know that there's one subscription and that gets you the maximum amount of NBA or the maximum amount of baseball or the maximum amount of NFL.
Now, we've talked about this previously. How do you make it so it's easier for the consumer? Which I think what we saw with the ESPN YouTube when it was 2 weeks where ESPN off the air, I think for you guys, which is a really positive story, was how many people wanted YouTube TV, which generally speaking, you guys aren't a cable provider, but historically the provider is the one who sort of gets the negativity. It seemed as if it was a little bit more towards ESPN. I think that's because of the user experience. When you look at what you're trying to create with YouTube TV, what is the goal?
In terms of simplifying things.
Yeah, and simplifying the sports.
Yeah.
Sports, and
Well,
also just like trying to solve the issue.
First thing, because I don't get an opportunity to do this that often, I just actually really want to apologize to the fan base out there. These negotiations are really tough. I think our media partners have the consumer's best interest at heart. We have the consumer's best interest at heart. They're just really fraught negotiations that involve really big numbers. And in some cases, we're really trying to move the industry forward from a product standpoint, and those are difficult conversations. So it's not lost on any of us at YouTube that it's not optimal when we go through these drop experiences, and we really regret them, and hopefully we get through them quickly or avoid them altogether. Now, what we're actually trying to do when we go through that is build a really complete fan experience on YouTube and YouTube TV. So everyone in the room, I hope, is a big sports fan. Everybody that's listening is a big sports fan. What we saw over the last several years was, this unraveling of the traditional television bundle. A lot of that was content moving into DTC services. And what you learn really quickly when you're standing up a DTC service is that streaming is really hard. And one of the things that can actually drive signups and audience is sports. So there's this impetus, I think, to pull more and more programming out of the traditional bundle and put it in these discrete standalone services. Well, that kind of sucks from a fan perspective. If you're a fan, and I'll use myself as an example on Saturday mornings watching the Premier League, trying to figure out whether a game was on Peacock or whether it was going to be available on YouTube TV. Even with me managing this business, it was a bit of a guessing game in the morning. And to NBC's credit, they got that immediately. We had a lot of conversations with their teams, and one of the solves they came up with, each of our partners comes up with kind of a unique solve, is they spun up the NBC sports networks again. I think all of us would say it's kind of weird to spin up a new linear network in this day and age. But what it accomplished for us was gave us the ability to acquire all of the sports programming that wasn't available in YouTube TV, that everybody, quite frankly, who's paying for YouTube TV is expecting that they're going to be able to get, and bring it back into our platform and our service. And it was a very similar conversation with ESPN. And credit to Jimmy, who I think was very flexible on this kind of stuff, where we were now able to bring in all of ESPN Unlimited, all the sports that sit within ESPN Unlimited into YouTube TV. So we've been able, I think, through these renewals and through these negotiations with our partners, to open up the opportunity for us to really this year deliver a completely new sports experience on YouTube TV for fans that will have the most complete sports experience of any service that's out there in terms of just the totality of live sports that's available. And we're going to be able to do it at a price point, I think, that is lower than what people were paying a year prior, right? Because people will be able to sign up specifically for a sports plan now if that's what they're interested in. So it's this really nice dual effect of more sports content in the platform, in the service, a lot of thinking going into how to redesign the service to accommodate that increase in sports content, and doing it at a price point that's actually finally, lower one year to the next, which has not been the trend historically.
And so
By the way, you're a huge sports fan.
Yes.
You know, legendary sports fan, I should say.
Oh, thank you.
How do you view the world from that perspective? You know, this notion of disaggregation versus
Yeah,
aggregation.
no, well, I think it's a problem. Like I have, with all due respect, I have Spectrum,
Yeah.
and they've brought in all the apps into their system where you get them, you know, as part of your service.
Absolutely.
Which is it's worked for them.
Yep.
And I do think people will pay a little bit more for it to be easy, like it's slightly more, not too much more. And I think that's what you're trying to do. I think Spectrum has done that, because what you guys have is basically everything except for Amazon Prime, Apple TV, and Netflix.
Yeah.
And so basically,
and they're all welcome on our service anytime.
We'll get everyone together. We're working on some people, so maybe we'll ask them if they'll go in your service in the future. But yeah, that makes sense. And then the price point to get to 60, will that stay there? How does that work in terms of the? I know things change slightly. I'm not saying like it has to.
We try and keep prices as stable as possible for as long as possible.
Yep.
I don't think I'd be credible if I stood up here and said it'll be that price forever. But we really try in many ways to try and be a low cost leader when we're talking about delivering this content to consumers. So we think we're price competitive with most of the services that are out there. And even if you tried to reassemble everything that we're packaging by just subscribing to all the DDCs, I think in one single product at one single price point, you're getting a pretty compelling offer.
Any chance of adding the RSNs, or what are the chances of adding the RSNs?
Well, I think the leagues are in the process.
Well, let me rephrase the question. Sorry, because I didn't ask it correctly. The local games that we traditionally are RSNs.
That's a great way to frame it.
Thank you.
Yeah, we would love to figure out a path with the sports leagues. We talk to them all the time. It's great content. It's stuff that sports fans care about. If I'm a Warriors fan, like I said, I want in and out of market as much as I can get it. And so, we're going to work with them to see what we can do there. Nothing to announce, of course.
Okay, now you mentioned ESPN Unlimited. You do have the agreement, but it's not on as of yet.
Yeah.
I know you guys have said this year. When do we think the people will have ESPN Unlimited on their service?
Yeah, hopefully in the second half of this year.
Okay.
We really try and hold ourselves to football season-ish time frames.
Okay.
But the thing I'd say about that is it's one thing to say you have all the content. It's another thing to say that the content is easy to find, that when I search for it, it's readily available, that when I go into the EPG, the live guide, that the stuff just shows up automatically. That's not really a word.
Yeah,
So I'll use
fair
it.
enough.
And so that's what really we're investing in right now. Because the really incredible thing that ESPN has done is they've gone out and licensed so much sports. It's just an incredible product from that perspective. But what I want to make sure is if you're a fan of the Patriot League lacrosse, that's front and center when you open up YouTube TV. And so that's the strength of, I think, our partnership with ESPN is they do such a great job of producing and aggregating all this content. And if we can use all of the work we're doing in search and discovery and recommendations and artificial intelligence to make sure that consumers can automatically find and discover new sports or new events, that's the investment we're making right now. That's why we're sort of taking our time with it. We could have easily just ingested everything and lit it up and just said, good luck trying to find everything that just got added to the platform. But we think we owe it to the consumer to kind of show them what a really great, compelling, singular sports experience can look like.
And this is a good place to end. We're presented here by WSC Sports. You mentioned AI.
Yeah.
How do you incorporate AI into what you're doing? And I got two questions. I want to know about the future and we're all going to be employed. I want to know about that in a second. But first off, how do you use AI?
How do I use?
Or how does YouTube? Yeah, YouTube.
YouTube. One of the things that hopefully many of the people that are listening or in this room have been able to experience is we've invested very heavily in this very cool companion experience called Ask YouTube. It's sort of the icon that you can just click on and ask them anything you want about a video that you're watching. That experience continues to get better and better and better. And you can imagine experiences like that around live sports where you could be like, how many touchdowns has this quarterback thrown in the past 6 games? What's this player's rating? How's this person doing in my fantasy league? So we're going to create through AI and through our Gemini integrations, I think, a really great immersive experience that allows for two-way interaction between consumers and their content. That's one thing. The other thing is, I've seen really incredible internal demos of how search itself on YouTube can be transformed through AI, natural language questions, things like that, where you could ask, you know, tell me how Steph Curry's done in the last several games. What were his best 3-pointers out of the last 3 games? And can we deliver really beautiful experiences against that in really simple ways? I think that's a second thing. I think we'll continue to lean into great partnerships that we have with companies like WSC to really showcase what's happening in a game, bring people right to the moment that they care about in a particular game, allow people to jump back and forth between everything that's happening. You can imagine a home experience, for example, that really starts to lean into your fantasy team and cultivates a home experience that's actually just giving you the specific highlights you want from the players that you care about. And then you can, we can go further into the future and just imagine all sorts of really cool experiences where maybe there's a place in the future where consumers can start to run play simulations and stuff like that. Like, I wasn't really sold on that last play. What if they had done it this other way? What would that have looked like? How would that have played out? And so you can imagine really interesting ways in which AI is really going to augment and enhance the consumer experience around live sports.
And it sounds like, do you think that will, to end here, solve the search issue? Because if AI, if you just can tell, and it works, pretty well now, but, it gets to a point where, just, I want to watch the Yankees. Boom.
Yeah, think of the magic of Gemini today when you experience it from a text perspective, right? It's pretty cool. You can ask it any question. It gives you tight summaries. You can go almost like doctoral dissertation deep on a topic if you want to. We think that same experience is around the corner for video, right? And so I think in particular in live sports where you're talking about 3-4 hour long events, AI can just have a transformative impact, I think, on how consumers experience and interact. Not just from a search perspective, but in a real-time perspective from how they're watching a game.
Interesting. Well, Christian Oestlien, this has been amazing. Really appreciate VP of subscriptions for YouTube. Really my pleasure to have you here on Off the Record with me, Andrew Marchand, presented by WSC Sports. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Andrew. It's a milestone moment to be able to do an interview with you. So
hold on, nobody heard that. I didn't hear that again. What was that?
I said, for anybody that works in this field, it's a milestone moment to be able to do an interview. So I appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much. Christian, once again for Christian, please. That's done. Thank you.